Hello, everyone. I'm Nilufar Bava, and this is
Lucy.
And together we'll be talking about how we make Prisma Docs effective and engaging. Yeah, so starting with Lucy.
Hi. Yes, so as you've worked out, this is a joint talk between Docs and WebDev. So I'm a technical writer at Prisma. I'm fairly new to it. I previously worked as a software developer. So I'm still sort of getting my head around how Docs works, but really enjoying it and enjoying combining the two things.
And yeah, again, Nilufar Bava. I'm a web development lead at Prisma. I've been working here since March 2020. A great place to work at. I was initially started off as a BlackBerry app developer, then turned to a web developer, and I've been living in Berlin since 6 years, and these are my handles. Now I'll pass the mic to Lucy to talk or start the talk.
Okay, so we're going to talk today about how we write and build our docs and the whole process from start to finish. So we'll start with the planning stage where we find out what needs to go on, and then we'll talk about how we write and build the docs, and then the process of reviewing, releasing, and getting feedback from the community. So, yeah, first is planning, where we try and find out what's going on. We use a docs-like code type of approach, where we work closely with the developers, and basically as soon as after they've started coding, we want to be starting writing. So we embed with the dev teams, we attend their planning meetings at the beginning of the sprint, and we try and keep up with what they're doing essentially. That involves us being very nosy, so we spend a lot of time hunting down interesting things in Slack channels and internal documents so that we're keeping up with what's going on. So once we've worked out what we're going to do, it's time to figure out the content. So for these slides, we're using, I don't know how clear it is, but it's a sort of running example of a guide to Prisma Day. So to do this, we'd talk to developers and product managers. We'd read all the internal notes we found while being nosy or that we were pointed to. And then it's time for what I'm rapidly discovering is the trickiest question in technical writing, which is working out where the topic actually goes once you start writing it. And that seems to lead to a lot of discussion and trying to figure out where it goes. So at that point, we're ready to start drafting. Neely will tell you a lot more in a minute about the technical side of what we use, but to give a very basic overview, we write our docs using Gatsby. The docs themselves are written in MDX files, which are markdown files, but with various custom JSX components, which allows us a bit more flexibility. So in our example Prisma guide, we have mostly markdown, but we have a couple of extra components. We have a top block component which we've defined, which we use for the overview, and we also have an admonition component we've defined, which we use for info, error, and warnings. So then, at this point, we can check whether it looks good. Gatsby allows us to have a local preview, and that reloads automatically, so we can do iterative changes and check it looks good. We host it on Netlify, so Netlify also comes with a preview, so we can send a preview link to any reviewers after it's been pushed to GitHub. So at this point, I'll hand you over to Nilu to talk about the building side.
Now to building the docs. Once the docs writing team decides that they need new MDX components or maybe enhancements to the existing ones, they'll start creating issues in the docs repo. So I don't know whether you can see it clearly, but this is an example of how an issue is made. So once they create the issue, they have to label it according to whether it needs to be picked up for the next sprint or not. And They also have to talk to the design team to make sure they have a proper design for the MDX component. It is feasible to be in the docs, and it is useful as well. And once they do this and they create the issue, the web dev picks it during their sprint planning. For web dev, the sprint planning takes place once in 2 weeks, and one of the doc writers, they join the planning meeting, and they then explain how or what they need from us. Then after this, we start building. We use Gatsby for building the docs. Nothing against Next or any other static generators, but we use Gatsby. And a few of the advantages we found in Gatsby is like better load times and its MDX friendliness, the SEO usage, and stuff like better community plugins. Now, there are two major plugins which we use, which we found useful for our docs. One is the Gatsby plugin MDX, because the docs are being written in MDX. This helps in generating HTML files from the MDX pages or the content files or MDX, any MDX files for that matter. And the Gatsby source file system plugin, which helps in separating the MDX content and the source folders. Now, there are also a few other plugins which we use, and some custom plugins which we have created from the team as well. Since this is an open source project, you can check these out in our plugins folder. Now to the components. We have layout components, and then we have custom MDX components. The layout components, for example, when you open the docs page, you can see that there is a nav bar, there is a secondary header, there is a side nav. I don't know whether you can see it clearly again here, but there is a table of content. Then there is the actual MDX content. And these, all the layout components reside in our source folder, and all the MDX component has its own folder called as custom MDX. That's how we have built the docs architecture. Now, how we make these MDX components available to the docs writing team, that is done through shortcodes. It's a pattern where we don't have to import every MDX component into every MDX file. You can just use an MDX provider and make it available globally. There is also the front matter, which is of very high importance to us, because we use front matter to manipulate our SEO data, our page hiding or showing, or maybe the the table of contents, stuff like that. So this is an example of front matter. It's too bright to view. So we use GraphQL queries to manipulate the front matter data to make sure that the SEO title and the description is available like for every page. It's custom made for every page. Now, after this is done, after we create the MTX component, now it's time to create the PR. And once this is created, we have a deploy preview in our hosting provider, which is then inspected by the docs writing team to make sure that everything is working as expected. And when they are happy with it, when everything is working fine, then it is merged. And it is made available to the entire docs writing team. And we also have a style guide in the docs web pages. It's under About. You can check that out to know about all the MDX components we have created. So, yeah, that's it about building. Now
I'll carry on and talk a bit about how we review our documents once we've got our draft to a reasonable state, and then it's time to ask for feedback. So it's pretty straightforward process of opening a PR in GitHub, and then we ask for feedback in the relevant Slack channels. So we normally try and get a review from a writer to check it reads well, and at least one review from a developer. We actually get really active engagement from developers, so often, even if you don't tag somebody in the GitHub PR, you'll get lots of people responding anyway, so we always get plenty of comments. That all works really well. And then there's one underlooked point, I think, with docs, which is that it's not just a one-way flow from docs into code. We also help test the product too, because when we're writing docs, we might discover things that are a bit inconsistent, or the flow isn't that good, and that can be worked back into the code. So we do also help test as well. So yeah, at that point we're ready to release if the reviews have gone well. So most of our docs go out during releases at the same time as the code, so we have to synchronize with the developers. We use a traffic light process on Slack, so it's fairly straightforward. We'll get a green light from the developers when they're ready for us to release. We'll merge our docs, we'll give a green light, and at that point, the release notes can also go out and link back to the docs. And then, yeah, we're not quite done yet, because then we have to see what everyone actually thinks. All our PRs and issues are on GitHub, so we do get comments from the community throughout. But of course, it's when it goes live is the point when the most eyes are going to be on new features, and that's when we tend to get issues. So we do get a lot of feedback from the community, which is really, really useful. And yeah, the docs team would like to say thank you for that, because our docs would not be as high quality as they are without everyone else's help. And now Nilu's going to say a little bit more about other ways we collect feedback.
Yeah, about the feedback component. So every MDX page or every docs page has a feedback component at the bottom of the page, like so. So we just have a thumbs up, a thumbs down component, which asks for your simple feedback, whether you're happy with it, whether you're unhappy with the page. And once that is clicked, an appropriate form slides into the page, which asks for the real thoughts, like what exactly you felt or what exactly was your feedback. And this form uses a Prisma client in the background, and we connect to our Postgres database using Netlify Lambda functions. And from these functions, we then use, just having the data is not enough. We need to identify the pain points and the strong or the useful features we have in the MDX or the docs pages. For that, we have a Redash dashboard. We fetch data from our Postgres database into this, and we make sure that we can, or the relevant person can see like what each page is about, whether they're happy with that, whether they're unhappy. So this is the data for a period of 6 months. So you can see how, mostly people are happy with the pages, some are not. There's also further drill downs here. Like you can see for each page what is the real feedback and what are the pain points, or what are the points, or what are the components which users really like. And depending on this particular information, the docs writing team or the web dev team can decide on whether to improve a component or a page, or whether to just keep doing what they're doing. So that is really useful for us. Now, I guess, yeah, that's the whole idea about creating the Prisma docs, collecting feedback and everything. Yeah, that's it. Anything else for you to add?
No, I think that's good. Thanks.
Yeah.